So I want to know, what's the plan with pill testing? Because I hear a lot of talk about it and a lot of opinions, but one thing the government hasn't given us yet is a plan. And why not though? Is it that their hardline stance is actually working and that's why they have so much faith in it? Or is it something else? The New South Wales government has said multiple times across multiple premiers that complete avoidance is your answer to drug-related deaths and hospitalisations, telling us that if you don't take it, no problem. Which I get their point, except for the fact that people aren't robots and you can't just program a different command into them and expect them to follow it. The complete avoidance hardline stance is the same logic used by those who put alcohol prohibition into place in the US, which was such a failure that it was overturned after 13 years, but not before it brewed up a whole underworld of trouble, effectively creating gangsters like Al Capone. And see, the problem with the approach is that 5 people have died in Australia at festivals in just a few short months from drug-related deaths. It's just not realistic to expect that people are just going to stop taking illicit drugs. And it's not a few outlaws either. The National Health Survey from 2016 showed that around 43% of all Australians over 14 had taken illicit drugs before. So it's impacting around about 1/3 of all Australians. And there's research that shows that illicit drug use is only increasing, showing that the use of drugs like cocaine is at an all-time high, while ecstasy also continues to rise. And research also shows us that the rising cost of drugs like ecstasy and cocaine also isn't deterring people from taking them. So even if you're lessening supplies through the war on drugs, you're not winning. Telling people not to use drugs isn't working because the laws tell people to do that. You don't need to repeat it because people are doing it anyway. You need to do something about it. People know they shouldn't speed in their cars, but they do. So as well as enforcement, we make sure that cars adhere to safety standards to protect people, and we adjust based on the need. For example, we modify speeds for school zones or roadworks. You'd be negligent to simply stand there and say, don't speed and you won't have an issue. Same way you'd also be negligent not to implement something to protect people or adjust laws based on hot zones for illegal drug use if it's a problem that's not going away. And I get the hesitation. As a politician, you can't just go around implementing something like pill testing because it's bad press, to be seen to be making drugs legal in a way. We've all seen how season 3 of The Wire turned out, where they concentrated drug use and turned a blind eye to it, but that's TV, and it seems politicians are more so focusing on the backlash that followed in the storyline, rather than asking if it actually worked. They say that there's no evidence to show that pill testing works, yet there are examples from Europe and the UK, as well as a trial in Canberra from 2018 at the Groove and the Moo Festival. 128 pills were tested and people found all sorts of things in their drugs, from ketamine to caffeine to paint. 12% of those people who had their pills tested said that they would use less. 5% said they wouldn't take what they tested but maybe something else. 7% weren't sure. And 18% said they wouldn't take anything that night at the festival. That seems like pretty clear evidence to me that it works. The simple fact that 2 pills that would have been taken otherwise were found to be deadly shows that lives have been saved. In fact, the number of deaths and rising drug taking rates are evidence that a hardline approach is just not working. And if it's not working, it clearly needs to be changed. Now, they say that it might lead to increased illicit drug use with the perception that it's safe to consume. And that's a tricky one. All the results do show that people may not take drugs in that instance if they do have concerns with what's in them. And if anything, there's going to be a greater awareness of the dangers of illicit drugs and what can be in them, rather than people just starting to think they're safe. We look at the majority of festival goers putting their googs under the microscope of Groove in the Mood were super surprised at what was in them, whether they're safe or not. See, the thing that we don't know is about how introducing pill testing might attract people who have never tried drugs before. And it's a reasonably well-founded concern, considering there can be long-term mental health effects of illicit drug use, as well as the potential for party drug users to go into more addictive and problematic illicit drugs. There are studies that link ecstasy users with an increased likelihood of trying drugs such as ice. Let's think about this though. Does it matter that more people take up illicit drug use if they can do it a hell of a lot more safely? The whole reason we have laws restricting the use of recreational drugs is to protect people. So if pill testing can stop people from dying, does it matter if more people are taking illicit drugs? We'll know when they don't have deadly substances. We know if they have really high concentrations. And if we do make taking party drugs safer and adjust the laws around them, could it not in turn open up options for people and prevent more people from diving into trying highly addictive drugs like heroin or the seemingly readily available in country towns drug, ice? Portugal recognised that something needed to change in 2001, and they actually took action. The country was heading for drug-fueled disaster, with heroin addiction and HIV at uncontrollable highs for the country. They relaxed their approach to illicit drug possession. And since then, they not only found that drug-induced deaths and HIV infection rates have declined, but so too has the use of illicit drugs overall. Now, I'm not saying we should copy their model, I'm just saying there is evidence where alternatives have worked. Because when people are dying, what you're doing is clearly not working and it's time to look at a different approach. If people aren't listening to you telling them to stop doing drugs, then you really have to ask why. Why are so many young people willing to take risks when they know it's illegal and it could cause them harm? And with that, you need to ask if it's something that you're doing that is contributing to that drug use. Aside from hardline anti-drug stances, maybe it's the decisions that politicians make that are contributing to the illicit drug use. If we look around at society, and millennials in particular, burnout has become the norm. We're ruining ourselves trying to live up to our parents' generation's definition of working hard, even though it's different to what we have now. And the environment is fucked, the housing market's fucked, racism, sexism, homophobia just keep rearing their heads in our lives, and people act like their hatred doesn't hurt anyone. Seems the world is full of schoolyard bullies who are determined to pick on the weak and the different, and those who pose a threat. Gun violence keeps getting defended. But worst of all, no one is listening to us. So please, listen now. You shake your head at the US gun laws and ask, how can they just do nothing? When people are dying here and you're just doing nothing, and you're still not listening.